Faro, de La Portuguesa de Madrid, Spain, and the title of the presentation is Book Fair and Cultural Presentation. Okay? So, please go ahead and, well, I'm sure that will be a nice presentation.
Well, thank you. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me and for letting me be here with all of you for sharing these thoughts about these topics that in many ways I approach in a different way as the ones you have already heard today and even yesterday. Because I'm not that focused on economics or dynamics of the contemporary book selling and publishing, despite I'm doing research in one of these events that in many ways set the trends for national and international book industry. I'm talking about book fairs, national and mostly international book fairs that curiously are venues that remain as the meeting place per excellence, even in those days of the streaming and the digital revolution. Maybe that's why I'm here with all of you, because of the importance of these events. Book events, literary prizes, and book fairs are becoming a significant research trend in the field. However, such attention has not always been paid to book fairs. Actually, beyond anniversary books, memoirs, and historical reviews, few publications have documented the real function of book fairs within the publishing industry. In this regard, I should say that scholarship in this area has emerged over the last decade, and fortunately today, research concerning book fairs expands in a great variety of topics such as press reception, audience engagement, cultural political framing, and even national branding. That's the point. This last item is the one I would like to get into. I should frame in many ways my presentations within this frame of national branding. Maybe you know, or maybe you don't know, concepts such as soft power from Joseph Nee, emotional elective affinity from Jessica Ginohead. Those concepts or ideas deal with the potential of culture for generating attractiveness in many ways. And talking about national branding, in many ways it uses the idea of brand. The concept of brand is linked to products with an emotional dimension. And over the last decades, some nations have adopted national branding strategies as a way to improve their international image or reputation. But how can we, or how can I, talk about national branding within book fairs? Well, that's the, if you want, novelty of my approach, or at least I argue that national and international book fairs consist not only in their commercial nature and literary appearance. More than this, they could also be analyzed as artificial and temporary environments where knowledge is exchanged, communities are shaped, but also some kind of international relations are performed due to the programs of the guest of honor. Maybe you know about that. It consists mainly in inviting countries, regions, or cities, for instance, just for presenting their culture in a broad way. I mean, ranging from literature, but also to music, astronomy, cinema, and so on. So, in the next minutes, I will focus on that. I will focus on guest of honor, on this figure of the guest of honor, because I do my research analyzing these programs. Because going from the controversies over whether national or local cultures are expressed and promoted, and concentrating on the exhibition space of the guest of honor within book fairs, I intend to explore how exhibition units create the conditions for telling specific stories about national or local cultures to abroad and foreign audiences. A narrative structure usually supported by the rest of events within the Guest of Honor program. So this is some kind of framework for what I'm gonna show you in the following minutes. This is the presentation outline. I just want to give you a couple of ideas. First of all, I will say something about the Book First project I was involved in the European University of Flensburg. After that, I'll say a couple of words about the Spanish publishing industry, and after that, I will go to the core of the presentation, dealing with the representation of Spain and its cultural image. So, where this approach, I mean, the framework I already told you, comes from. In the honor of the truth, I should say that I developed this view, this point of view, during my work in this project, supported by the German research foundation called Book Fairs as a space of cultural and economic negotiations. It was a project that lasted from 2017 to 2020, and it was focused on cultural policies of international book fairs under Guest of Honor. It was a great opportunity for me for doing film work in different big book fairs. I was managing the field works at national and international book fairs in Germany, in Spain, and Latin America. I was also conducting interviews with my teammates, with most of the most important actors within the field positioned in the book fairs. I don't know, it was book fairs directors, but also publishers, literary agents, as well as the public itself in those fairs in Spain, Mexico, Argentina, and Germany. Some of these ideas or the results of this project, it's available in Spanish, in German, also a bit in English, in these scholarly articles and volumes. It was also during this project where I focus on, or I try to highlight the fault lines between politics and economy, as well as the pure literature and the marketplace imperatives. And also because of the role that I played during this project, I focused on, or I tried to understand the cultural and creative industries in Spain, as well as the image of Spain itself, portrayed or at least projected in these events. And I was wondering how the culture could help for shaping a different image of Spain when it performs abroad, right? Of course, when we talk about creative or cultural industries, we should say that in Spain, the Spanish publishing sector has a great importance within the so-called cultural industries, due to the volume of business and the number of jobs it generates. Furthermore, the Spanish publishing industry is one of the most internationally projected because it has as well a global language, but also a great diversity of internal languages. As you can see, 24% of the publishers' books are written in co-official languages other than Spanish. In Spain, we have more than 174 publishers, and 5 of them are in the list of the largest publishers in the world. When I was thinking where Spain is trying to project themselves, I was thinking on exports, and as you can see, Europe is one of the main destinies, also Ibero-America because of the language, of course, and United States is not that important, but everyone wants to go there, so it's important indeed. And again, something that some of you said during the conference. When we talk about publishing industry, we are not talking only about literature. There are some other genres very important, as well as scientific literature, children literature, religion, and so on. It's important because Spain still is the principal market for Spanish content, as well as the power for translations. When people from other countries want to buy this content, they went to the Spanish market, but also in Spain we have different translation programs in regional level, but also in national level. So that's why thinking about translations, thinking about projecting not only the Spanish publishing industry, but also Spain itself, that was probably the main reason to go to Frankfurt and perform as a guest of honor. But also because books can shape the cultural identity of a country. And when I said that, maybe you are thinking about last year, 2022, when Spain was guest of honor, but I was thinking on the very first time that Spain was performing there. It was in 1991, and it was a great opportunity for Spain to project some kind of a new image. It was the time, the motto of this performance was the Spanish Hour, La Hora de España, and they wanted to refresh the country's image after 40 years of Franco's dictatorship. As you may know, Franco's dictatorship started in 1939 and lasted till 1975. So in the early 90s, the countries, they wanted to refresh, as I said, this image. Despite Spain looked in those days at Europe from its recovered democracy, the country's identity was still, how can I say, linked to all manners, all images and stereotypes in many ways. At least in the eyes of the audience attending the book fair. Maybe it's because the pavilion, as you can see, with these little pavilions inside, were made out of books, most of them regarding the history of the Spanish literature since Middle Ages to the early 90s, in a chronological way, but highlighting the universal contribution of Spanish literature. But probably that was not the worst thing to me. Probably when people thought about these stereotypes was more in relation to these red curtains, that if you go to the press during those days, they said that it recalled the bullfighting case. But maybe it was also because the floor that you see there was covered with sand, and it was quite difficult to walk there. Also, it reminded some kind of cliche, not only the bullfighting in an arena, but also the beach, you know? And that was something that was there. But what was interesting for me is that in those days, they, in many ways, created or at least established some of the elements that in the following years are going to be the basis of the cultural identity of Spain at book fairs. I'm talking about this kind of bibliographic exhibitions. These exhibitions, in this case, Letras de España, focused on Golden Age, literary myths, was very important, but in the following years, in different book fairs, this bibliographic exhibition is at the core of every present. Bigger, smaller, but with this kind of bibliographic exhibition. As well as Spanish writers, in this case with 80 Spanish writers, ranging from the old ones to the brand new authors. But what's more important for me is that this literary myths, as the Spanish literature of all time, was one of the bases. Also, the pavilion or stand, because remember, it's not the same to be guest of honor in Frankfurt than in, I don't know, in Romania or in other smaller book fairs, right? So the pavilion or the stands were, and they were in those days and continue being painted with the colors of the national flag. But also, there were more elements. This idea of, this concept of prototypical ideas attached to Spain. And it was kind of ironic, because for instance, maybe you can read that Ken Benson, professor of, in Spanish at the University of Gothenburg, said in the year 2009 that the presence of Spain in Gothenburg was a great opportunity for create your own impression of what is happening in cultural Spain away from the tourist traps, myths of a distant, isolated and picturesque country of flamenco and bullfighting. But again, flamenco was very present. It was in the aperture of the book fair. There was a flamenco concert as well as sevillanas, dancing, of course with red wine from Spain, Spanish ham. Do you have tried that? Yeah, Spanish ham. Exactly. So flamenco, bullfighting, in many ways, because in other book fairs they were dealing in a round table with the ethics of bullfighting and so on. It's something recurrent in many ways, as well as this traditional food, as you can see, with tapas and so on. So for me, it was interesting. I'm making it more in detail in a forthcoming article, how during the years coming from the 90s to these days, this image of Spain portrayed in the book fairs are persistent with these kind of ideas. But what's more interesting for me to attend in last year's Frankfurt Book Fair, some kind of a turning point. Because Spain, as guest of honor in Frankfurt Book Fair 2022, they tried to shift, to change this image in many ways. The pillars of the Spanish project behind this presence of Spain was, first of all, linguistic diversity. They want to stress this linguistic diversity as well as gender equality. They invited equal number, or at least more number of women than men, as well as they try to focus on different backgrounds from the authors writing in Spanish. But they also wanted to show a deep respect for the modern publishing industry. As you can see in this pavilion, some of the stages were in honor of the different parts of the publishing cycle. It was named after the translator, named after the publisher, and so on. It was like trying to express that they were there for the publishing industry as well. In this case, Spain invited 180 Spanish writers, again, sacred cows, as Rosa Montero, Antonio Muñoz Molina, Enrique Villamatas, or Arturo Pérez Reverte. Some kind of what I can call maybe tentatively new literary myths, because they paid homage to Carlos Ruiz Zafón, Almudena Grandes, and Javier Marías, those who are not with us, they died in the late years, but also to new voices, like, for instance, Irene Vallejo, the bestseller phenomenon with Papyrus, right? But as you can see, the pavilion was completely different to others. No mention to any Spanish symbols, no mention even to books, because remember, books were quite important in all this presence. Now it's quite different. And as you can see in Julia Navarro's view, it was a great success. We will see, because they wanted to present a new Spain, imaginative, digital, inclusive, sustainable, creative, but during those days, in the media, in Germany, they present the guest of honor recalling some of these old ideas. As you see, the myth, literary myth of Quixote, as well as the recurring problem of the Spanish Civil War or the bullfighting in many ways. So that's why I say it's interesting to see how, or at least if it was a success or not. Because next year could be a good test in the International Book Fair of Guadalajara. Spain is going to be the guest of honor, and maybe we can check the power of this so-called Generation 22 and its cultural horizon of imaginary. And we will see if they came to stay or not. Thank you very much.